Why, hello there. Today is day 624 of watching the Elden Ring announcement trailer. It has been 624 days since it was first announced at E3 2019. And joining me today is a very special guest, someone who knows Souls inside and out and really dissects the series. I am joined by Illusory. Well, Illusory, thanks for coming on today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's it's one thing where it's like when the games are coming out, as I watch stuff and get into the content, one of the first things I do now and plan on doing for Elden Ring is seeing how soon you and Lance start uploading content and dissecting the game to pieces because that's a part of the Souls experience for me now. It's just enjoying those videos and getting to know the inner workings of these games.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I usually what happens anytime a new Souls game comes out is I always promise to myself like I'm just going to play the game normally.
Yeah.
But then my first playthrough winds up taking like 100 plus hours because I get stuck on something. Like
Yeah.
there's just something, it's usually matchmaking, but it might be something else where I just start invading people all day long and try
Yeah.
like what's the invasion range, like it
Yeah.
just and I get stuck in a weird loop of testing something and I won't even everyone else will have like finished the game like way before me.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And that actually transitions well into the topic I wanted to discuss before watching the trailer today is so, like for a lot of people, they're just waiting for the game to come out, living their lives. I'm interested in the development and stuff, so I track that pretty closely. But for yourself and someone just who's so interested and knows the mechanics and the meat of these games so well. How are you looking forward to Elden Ring in your own way? Just excited for it, or are you already thinking of like what you might hope there is for the compared to the Souls games? Like, what's sort of your feelings on Elden Ring at the moment?
Oh, sure. Well, I sort of have a few like base expectations that I'm curious about. Like, I just want to see what's going to happen with the game. The biggest thing I think is world design and layout.
Hmm.
I know they have a big design challenge in front of them. I think I could use Zelda Breath of the Wild as a comparison,
Yeah,
which I thought that game was awesome. And but I know like one of the bigger complaints that I can understand with that game is they got the big above ground open world stuff down and it was really cool, but some
hmm,
people felt the dungeons were lacking a little bit.
yeah,
And for me, it was really important for a Zelda game to do more of a. I'm a fan of the original Zelda, a lot of the older Zelda games. So I just want to see like a modern reinterpretation of an open world Zelda game.
yeah,
And but I can see the problem or the sort of uphill battle of trying to create a bigger open world game, and
yeah,
but having that sort of classic from software level design where everything is intricate and
yeah,
interconnected shortcuts and stuff. Um, with the scope of the project that it has, I'm pretty confident that they can pull something off really cool. But I'm really hoping the vibe of the game is that when you travel from city to city across this big world, that you're gonna wind up in somewhere that has the quality of like a Yarnum
yeah.
or a Boletaria, or it's like a sense like just imagine just like finding Sense Fortress like in the middle of the woods somewhere. Like
Yeah,
that would
right.
be super freaking cool.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's, I in my videos, I've been sort of pulling that apart the last few days actually, is just, Dark Souls and so many of its mechanics, it's not just an easy, like, well, just make the world bigger. In the Dark Souls 3 DLC, I recently talked about how Miyazaki is actually quoted as saying for like the Ashes of Ariandel DLC, like the wolves and stuff, that their AI and the openness was something they were trying to achieve there. And they don't tie it to Elden Ring at all, but um, it's such a small scale that doing it in a DLC is a totally different task than trying to make the whole world work that way. And Miyazaki has mentioned having some of those classic dungeons where you would do that, but there's so many other just details like, like what's the checkpointing system going to be like that just I don't know
Yeah.
how it scales at this point, and I'm super interested in how they're going to have to tackle that because the Souls games don't really like you can attest like the numbers and the math changes and it sometimes it doesn't change, but like
Mhm.
they're so incremental in their changes, but it feels like open world is going to demand so many like interruptions to the formula that they're really gonna it's gonna be something pretty different.
I think so. I think they would have to start. pretty much from scratch on a lot of ideas
Yeah.
to make the open world concept work. Something I'm interested in seeing with regards to like multiplayer kind of
Hmm.
mechanics is I wonder what their equivalent of PvP arenas will be.
Yeah.
Um, because you've always had like these weird PvP arenas in these Souls games. There was the Battle of Stoicism from Dark Souls 1, which was incredibly unpopular. Then they did a better job in Dark Souls 2, kind of. I mean, like the Blue Sentinels arena was
Hmm.
kind of crap, but the red one was pretty well used. But I kind of think they have this opportunity. They've always also had in their games, apart from those dedicated arenas, places that were built as multiplayer hotspots, like the Forest in Dark Souls 1, etc. And I think it would be pretty cool if they treated like a particular kingdoms or locations as like this is the area where a lot of crazy multiplayer crap happens. So like as
Yeah.
soon as you enter this town, it's like a free for all, multiplayer
Hmm.
bonanza, I guess, of some kind.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's something they could do is instead of going the route of creating something like one of those kind of underutilized, kind of boring arenas,
Yeah.
they could sort of treat a space in the game as like, hey, this is where this area is going to lean a lot heavier on PvP and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's been one of the biggest things that I've also been wondering is because you would want it to be something like that because I know the arenas haven't been super popular in the past, and I think a lot of PvP players would be disappointed with having just something like that. But then, do you limit it to like these more classic Souls dungeons, or like do you introduce some version of open world PvP? How does that, like how does that even work,
Right.
especially if someone's on a horse and
Yeah.
they could run
Yeah.
away from you and there's no fog gates? Like there's so many questions about how that could work. And then if they limit it, like I could see them limiting it to dungeons, but I agree with you that just you would need that sort of free for all thing. And that, it just seems like it would have to change a lot. And then I'm sure that's going to be a whole lot of testing. Like,
Oh, sure.
there's no way this is going to function just like classic Souls. At least I'm not a huge PvPer, so I don't
Mhm.
have tons of experience with it. But when I've sort of just thought about it, like as a thought experiment, it's just like, yeah, how are they going to do that? Because I would love to invade someone in the open world or be invaded, but there's no real. I don't see how they could do that in a way, especially with the peer to peer, and have that
Right.
not be a total mess.
Yes. But for the record, I definitely want that to be in the game for sure.
Yeah,
Like, I wouldn't want the PvP only relegated to like these discrete arenas.
yeah,
Again, it's a huge design hurdle, like you just said. But I absolutely want someone chasing me like on horse,
yeah,
like somewhere out in the complete middle of nowhere. Like
yeah,
that to me is the real spirit of multiplayer in these games. Is like when it happens incidentally and you're not totally prepared for it or
yeah.
overthinking it too much. Like you just summon somebody for co-op out of the blue, or just
Mhm.
get invaded out of the blue, and it just becomes its own kind of weird thing.
Yeah.
And to me, it's always important that that can happen somewhere. That's not like, oh, this is the PvP place. Like, no, I definitely want that to happen in the middle of nowhere in the woods.
Yeah, and it's I the biggest example I can think of, and unfortunately I played it offline, but Ashen has at least a co-op and it's kind of open world. I don't know if you've played Ashen at all, but it's more open, so it feels like they could achieve something like that. It's just such a difference, and if the scale's really going to be so vast, like there's no fog gates. It's just something where it's like, how do you keep it fun without an invader having to chase someone for like 5 minutes?
Right.
So and we really won't know, but it'll be something that'll be super interesting to see if they talk about it. Like, because I know it's one of those things where I would probably say that besides just seeing the world and the basic gameplay, I assume a large portion of the player base is like, tell me about multiplayer. And From is probably just going to quietly not talk about it for a while.
Right.
So it's,
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's the case.
yeah, exactly. So the multiplayer is definitely, a big thing. And, it'll be interesting too to see how much, um, the classic Soul stuff is mixed up just with if the AI truly is better. And in this open world where there's not going to be, I don't think there's going to be the same level of like shortcuts and, like, will they put as many like illusory walls out in an open world just because
Right.
like the odds of finding it in a corridor are even kind of slim sometimes. So putting it in a whole big world, it's just a lot of interesting questions that I assume
Mhm.
will just be like such a big but hopefully fun task for people like yourself who are like, okay, let's figure out the mechanics. And I'm sure that must be something of a treat when there's like a new game versus like another Souls entry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
So
oh, go
I was
ahead.
gonna say something I've been curious about too is this is a very specific thing to bring up, but animals. Um, Demon Souls in its cut content has like a handful of animals in it,
Hmm.
and none of them have like completed animations or anything. But there's like models of like some deer and like an alligator and stuff like that. And it seems like, oh, this would actually be the appropriate game to bring that up in.
Yeah.
Throughout the Souls games, if you see like a random animal that's not an actual enemy, I don't think there's a single instance where you can ever interact with them or kill them.
Hmm.
Crows and stuff, they like fly away if you get too close to them, so I guess that's sort of an interaction. But you shoot an arrow at them and it never does anything. It
Yeah.
just flies right through them. So I'm just kind of curious, like, oh, this is a game that would probably make sense to have some amount of wilderness,
Yeah.
uh, and that would sort of be new territory for them in a Souls like at least.
Yeah.
Because I think the world would kind of demand it in a way, but who knows? There's many directions they could go.
Yeah. And I believe Omnipotent, the insider, he has hinted towards the fact that that is something that they are exploring more, is the idea of wildlife. And I don't know what all that entails exactly, if that fits in mechanically or if it's just for atmosphere. But yeah, it'd be very interesting to have these just sort of, you know, just AI, and just how they, if they do more of the pack stuff with wolves, or if they have, like you said, like deer and other like non-hostile animals just out in the world and what purpose they might serve.
Watch it wind up just be like exactly like Shadow of the Colossus, and it's just like a couple lizards and birds, and like that's it, and
Yeah.
nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah, so well, if they did a game where you were just traveling around and then going to fight some cool boss, like I would take it. I know a lot of people would be upset, but like that sort of solitary experience would be a bold move, I think, given what they're looking at. But it's, I think they're going to go big because they're marketing. There's between the announcement trailer we'll be watching and then just the animated logo. There's a lot of, and it could be a lot on Bamco's side, but there's a lot of stuff about the next big fantasy world, the next epic. So it really
Hmm.
feels like they're trying to pull out all the stops, and I'm assuming they're trying to not make you forget Dark Souls, but say like this is the next Dark Souls series, essentially.
Right.
So that'll be interesting. And then a huge thing, which, is supposedly a day night cycle, which they've been trying to kind of do, it feels like, since Dark Souls 2. Like this has been a super long running thing that's kind of been in the games with phases for daytime changes, but like a day night cycle finally being in the game. I wonder what sort of weird stuff that'll lead to having to like figure out, and what mechanics they might tie to time of day.
Hmm. I mean, I would definitely, the first obvious thing to do would be to go full Castlevania 2 on that and just have like more and different enemies like
Yeah,
come out in the wilderness like at night.
yeah,
Uh, like that's the thing you have to do. But yeah, like you said, they have so many weird mechanics across their games. I
yeah,
mean, Dark Souls 1 in particular, but even all of them. I mean, I think Insight from Bloodborne and
yeah,
other things, and I'd be surprised if there aren't side mechanics that wouldn't be like impacted by that, you know?
yeah, exactly. And that actually brings me up. So I don't even remember when you wrote it, but a long time ago on Tumblr, you had um, you made a article about all the cool asynchronous stuff in Dark Souls 1. And every time a new From game comes out, I'm just like desperately hoping this is the one where they bring back weird asynchronous online mechanics. And it's just, I don't think Elden Ring is probably the one, just because they have so much on their plate where they're really trying to like change their whole world structure that they're used to and trying to put you on a horse. But man, I would kill for it's just like Vagrants. I just feel like some of that stuff is unmatched in the series, like just with some of the
Absolutely.
creativity.
Yeah, I've always been a huge proponent. Of course, I mean, I wrote that article about all the weird stuff Dark Souls
Yeah,
1 had online. To me, I think it's been a big design challenge for them to sort of streamline and optimize the multiplayer components.
Yeah.
They want to have a few weird things in there. Dark Souls 2 had like the Rat King Covenant, which was pretty cool and strange. Um, but for me, the biggest thing is like indirect. Like you're not talking about multiplayer. It's not about invading or summoning someone. It's about some other online interaction. Curse statues left by other players when they get cursed by a basilisk.
Yeah.
Or Miracle of Residence and stuff like that. And but I think I would absolutely agree with your prediction there that this is probably not the game that's going to go hard on that.
Yeah.
I would though. I think something a mechanic like Vagrance and Miracle of Resonance though, like I think those would lend themselves really well to like an open world type game because like running into a rare creature, having like a larger landscape for that to potentially happen in, that could be really cool.
Yeah.
And the sort of the mechanic like Miracle of Resonance, where if anyone's not familiar, that's a mechanic in Dark Souls 1 that didn't really work in Dark Souls Remastered very well. So if you've only played the remaster, you might have never seen it. But when you cast certain miracles, that leaves like a white ring on the ground.
Yeah.
And if you stand near it, it makes other miracles just like a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
And again, that's the kind of thing where like if you're out in the middle of nowhere, but you see one, I feel like that's a cool way to like sort of like have the feeling that you are doing this sort of parallel dimension type thing where there are other players occupying the same space, even if you feel like very lonely and isolated in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And are there any one thing that pops to mind is I'll pitch you the question and then just give my own answer that popped into my head, but I'm just thinking about like other mechanics in Souls that like you would like to see return in Elden Ring, even if they're changing a lot about the formula, if they're sort of keeping some of these core Souls components. One thing I would love for them to bring back is some version of the Bonfire aesthetics, or just some way to fight bosses again in an easier way without having to go back through the entire game.
It's interesting because Sekiro recently had that DLC that had a boss rush mode added to it. So I feel like from the production end of things, I feel like there's probably a push for that.
Yeah.
But you never know if FromSoftware cares.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't know if they care at all about like people wanting that. But I mean, that is a fundamentally really nice thing to have. Being able to refight a boss, that's a big draw for co-op for me.
Yeah.
I get to help someone, but I also sort of get to see the boss fight again.
Yeah.
And that is something that definitely should be in their games. And there's always freedom to implement it in a cool, clever way. It doesn't have to be like its own setting in the menu, like this is the boss rush mode. Now it could be some weird like monument that you go and interact with in some dungeon, and some boss reappears or whatever. But that's I think that's definitely something that should be added, and it probably is on their mind because we just saw it in Sekiro. But you never know.
It makes me wonder so my own pet theory is that Sekiro only got an update because it was going on to Stadia and they got some Google money and they decided, okay, let's use some Google money to just do this thing. But I can't help but feel like the messaging system in Sekiro is almost like a backdoor beta for what they might be doing in Elden Ring as far as messages go. Just because like it seems like something that would maybe make sense to just try out on a scale while you're developing your next game.
So. It was very strange. No one was asking for it for Sekiro. And so it's kind of a strange thing. At first I thought it was pretty cool that they're adding it, but the longer I sort of chewed on some dissenting opinions being like, nah, these really don't need to be in the game, I was like, yeah, you know what? You're kind of right. So I definitely see where you're coming from with that, where it seems like it might have been something on their plate where they were maybe didn't feel it was necessarily 100% needed for Sekiro, but it could be something they were experimenting with, and it was kind of like a why not scenario.
Like you could kind of test it out and test the waters, and like people didn't know that they were doing like a public beta test on this new mechanic because you're putting it in a different game, but maybe if it works well, we can use something like that in Elden Ring.
Right.
So,
which would be super weird, but also not surprising at all at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that as I've been digging into, I've been getting really into From Software's development while I look at Elden Ring, and it's so interesting to see, as we've talked about a bit, like it seems almost random what From decides to keep or get rid of as you go through their games, and then when you start looking at things like the fact that Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3 overlapped in development, it starts to make sense why they took different directions because
Hmm.
they were being developed in tandem. And so it's, so for alongside this, you're looking at, Sekiro overlapped it. So when people talk about mechanics coming in from Sekiro, I'm like, probably not. Not only because I don't think it fits what they're going for with the game. Like, Sekiro is very much a depth of combat, where Elden Ring is leaning, it sounds like, even harder into the RPG side. But it's just interesting to consider that as part of From's kind of like strange process. Like I don't know how often it happens with other studios, but making the second and third installment, having them have like a year overlap in their development, just seems wild to me.
Oh yeah.
And like it explains so much about Dark Souls 3 though, and like why it doesn't feel like it addresses Dark Souls 2 until the DLCs in any meaningful way. And then even then it's just sort of a nod toward a few locations, but it's it's really fascinating. And I do wonder and I curious with your Dark Souls 3 stuff, like
Hmm.
how much, it seems like there was so much on the table with Dark Souls 3 that got thrown away and quickly changed into the final product we got. And I like Dark Souls 3 all right. I like Dark Souls 3. It's a serviceable game. I don't love the narrative that much, and I think that's part of
Hmm.
their quick turnaround. But like,
Yeah.
do you have any thoughts about just how much they threw away with Dark Souls 3 and if any of that may, like, just pure speculation, but pop into Elden Ring, or the odds of some of those, so many mechanics and so many strange artifacts in Dark Souls 3, and the odds of those showing up, just knowing that the Dark Souls 3 group went into Elden Ring after the DLC, most likely, and this is speculation on my part, most likely that Yui Tanamura, went on to direct Elden Ring directly following the DLC.
So here's like an oddball idea I can throw out there. You talked about how do you handle checkpoints in an
Hmm.
open world game. Dark Souls 3 had a cut place your own bonfire mechanic.
Yeah.
And that's something that could actually probably work really well in an open world game.
Yeah.
If you, because there's certain ways you could constrain that, where you could say maybe you can't put two within, X amount of distance
Hmm.
from each other, like a certain radius to them.
Yeah.
And then you could also have a separate thing where like maybe once you're inside a kingdom, if kingdoms really are that like hard divided kind of from the surrounding geography or whatever,
Yeah.
it could always be like once you're inside, then you can't freely place them for whatever, they could make up some reason in the lore or whatever.
Yeah.
uh there's already some kind of respawning type thing inside the town or whatever, so you're too close to one, so you can't make your own new one or whatever.
Yeah.
um but I feel like that is an opportunity to address the new design of Elden Ring and maybe tap
Yeah.
into something that didn't make it into Dark Souls 3.
Yeah, because I think you felt the echoes. Like I think the lighting in Dark Souls 2, and then just a whole slew of the cut mechanics in Dark Souls 3. You could kind of see them, and I just think it's how From works. Like as you've shown in your dissected videos, like people like to, I think, imagine that they craft this perfect sculpture, but I think the real strength of From is that they throw out so many ideas. They're like not worried about trashing systems and ideas and areas and characters if it doesn't fit their vision, but that they do so much of it at the front and then they just hack away until it's what they want. They're very subtractive, I think, in their design process.
Yes.
And
Yeah, absolutely.
I sort of get the feeling like over Dark Souls, they kept brushing up against these things for one reason or another, and that maybe Elden Ring could be the fulfillment of some of those things where they're like, oh, we couldn't do it here, but now we can. And yeah, speaking of the bonfire mechanic, I've had some really, I think, kind of smart comments on some of my videos when I brought up the topic. Is some people have thrown out, what if your horse was like essentially like the bonfire, and that you could sort of rest it at certain places in the open world, but then when you go to a dungeon, you can't bring your horse in with you, and it goes to some other sort of dungeon system. It maybe just be like one checkpoint right at the start, and then
Ah,
you shortcut.
not a bad idea.
I think that could work. The one thing I think of is, like how does that and I don't know how it worked in Dark Souls 3. How does that work with like enemies nearby? How does that work with like just putting it in weird places? I'm not sure how it would work if they would somehow limit how often you could sort of rest, or if it was affected by the time of day or whatever, but it was a comment I saw a couple times, and it made some sense just because the horse is already on you, so to speak.
Hmm.
But just as an
Yeah,
interesting idea.
yeah, that could absolutely work, and I could see them. They could always handle that the same way. Resting at bonfires work when enemies come nearby.
Hmm.
Where it's like kind of like maybe it just won't
Hmm.
let you do it if you're too close to combat.
Yeah.
This is a very funny technical thing, but for a long time I wondered what was up in Dark Souls 1. This is stupidly specific, but the first bonfire in the Duke's Archive has like those two boars that precede it.
Yeah.
But you can't actually rest at that bonfire unless you kill both of them.
Okay.
But one of them is actually pretty damn far from the bonfire.
Hmm.
So that always confused me so much. I was like, that enemy is super far away, where you can go like anywhere else in like a hollow or skeleton, you can come like quite a lot closer before the bonfire is blocked out. Until someone just pointed out to me like the bonfires didn't actually use a radius
Mm.
system. It was just based on collision.
Oh, okay.
So whatever chunk of ground like that bonfire was attached to,
Mm.
that like entire thing, if there's like an enemy on it, like it wouldn't let you use it. So in some
Okay.
cases, it's like a fairly small room. But in the case of like the entrance of Duke's Archives, it's like that entire starting
Mm.
hallway gets included.
Okay.
So I thought that was a really funny, weird, like almost like oversight of that type of design where like,
Yeah.
it almost works just fine the entire game. You never stop to think about it.
Yeah.
But there's like that one little crack in the design where it was like, oh, this is works a little weird.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting. And assuming like one of the things that's sort of interesting to me, I don't have the technical knowledge to know, is it's fascinating to me that they're still using the same engine even for Elden Ring. Like I don't know how much you know about the engine of it, but just like the ways that they've used it at this point, it seems like they're really, like the code in there must, like if they're taking something that's been around since Demon Souls and knowing that Sekiro modified it, and I'm assuming they're modifying it again, I'd be super curious just to see what weird artifacts exist in the code at this point and how they're going to like cleverly reutilize some of the programming. Like, if they somehow, if you dig into it and find out like, and if the horse thing was true, that the horse is somehow like just flagged as like a bonfire or something.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
I would absolutely expect that there's a bunch of insane spaghetti code and a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that would work that way.
Yeah.
I would like be willing to bet on it.
Yeah.
A perfect example from Sekiro is as soon as the debug menu leaked for that, I haven't really poked into Sekiro very much yet, but like one of the first quests I had, which people probably already found out with Cheat Engine like months before that, but um I was like, how does the balance system work? Right? Like in previous games, you have stamina
Mm.
and poise. So like I just immediately knew, like knowing how these games work, like underneath the hood. Like, and I don't really know, despite all the dissecting stuff I do, I don't really know much about the games on a technical level. I'm not like a programmer or
Mm.
a coder or anything. But I do a lot of experimenting with the game's like debug menus, so I know like how a lot of things are kind of like organized or sort of work on some level.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge red flag. I'm like, you have this balance system, and I just know before I look at anything, it's clearly going to be copying something from a previous game, even though the previous games
Yeah.
didn't have balance. And that turned out to be completely true. I thought it was like a coin toss. I was like, it's going to be using poise or it's going to be using stamina.
Yeah.
And I look it up, and it was just using stamina. The
Yeah.
same literal like you have your like HP, stamina, MP in the previous games
Hmm.
as like values that are listed out in there, and it was just balance is stamina. And I
Yeah.
thought that was funny to see. So that is absolutely, I would expect Elden Ring to copy over and adapt. Another example from Dark Souls 1 is grave lording.
Hmm.
When you get grave lorded, if you're in New Game Plus or higher, you have like these extra Black Phantom enemies show up. And in Demon Souls, if your world tendency goes dark enough, you also have some extra Black Phantom enemies show up. And unsurprisingly, in Dark Souls 1, they actually just copied over world tendency. And that's actually how it works. When you get grave lorded, like your world tendency just goes down by like 1 point or up by 1 point or something really funny. And then it
Mm.
makes those enemies appear.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you know, that's another reason why you know, like I don't think they're going to have any deflect mechanics because they're using Dark Souls as the base, so I
Yeah.
expect it to be more like Dark Souls 3, but also I don't think they'll have a deflect system because they'll have stamina, and I don't think they're gonna, unless they really want it, they're not gonna want to rewrite the code, you know, and modify all that stuff just to get that system in, which probably would only be in a limited capacity anyways, because
Hmm.
they've already written it and it's going to be used in the classic way. So I know that's how it goes with all programming, but I think that's one of the things I really look forward to is seeing how you know, like the skeleton of Dark Souls is just inside Elden Ring, and it
Hmm.
sounds like Demon Souls, and you know how much that they even borrowed from Sekiro as they got through the development, like swapping back and forth. So that'll be fun to figure out. And yeah, you know, you mentioned at the beginning how like it takes you a long time to play through, and like my big thing is like lore and story, but I'm the same way where it's just gonna take me, and knowing it's open world and that I don't have like 8 hours a day to play this game, it's gonna take me forever if the scale of the world is anything like what they're talking about.
Hmm.
And so it's just I look forward to it, and then you know, I hope it's able to, you know, I know the first thing that like Lance is gonna do is it seems like he instead of like you know, like most gamers, you know, look for the start menu, and I feel like Lance, when he gets a game, he looks for the debug menu, and that's the first thing he does with the games is get into that. But that's one of my most fascinating things, and it is because they continually reuse those codes. And you know, I sort of the day that they actually overhaul an engine or make a new engine or move to Unreal, I'll be sad if you don't have like the same door opening animation.
Right. Exactly.
It's been there so long.
Exactly.
But
Uh, it, Another quick example too of code carrying over in a really weird way is Dark Souls 3 Poise. That's another funny one where, like, again, if you look under the
mm,
hood, that's known for getting rid of traditional poise
yep.
and doing like a super armor poise thing, but it still has the space like in the menus for like where Dark Souls 1 poise, like where those values would be.
Hmm.
And as it turns out, that is actually used in the game in some places. Like anytime you have a boss that takes a bunch of hits to get stagger,
Mm.
they are using Dark Souls 1 poise mechanics.
Oh,
So
interesting.
you have, and there's also other ways to stagger enemies in Dark Souls 3 where, like, if they're holding a shield up, you can hit them a bunch of times to sort of like kind of stagger them. And that's not using stamina either, like you would expect it would for the player character. So there's like three different ways to stagger enemies in that
Hmm.
game.
Interesting.
And it's just like, oh my god, it's like spaghetti code at that point where
Yeah.
like what is this tied to? Like you're just
Yeah.
talking about like, oh, how are enemies staggered? And it's like left using stuff left over in the game from previous games,
Yeah.
using some new stuff, and it's all over the place, and we can definitely expect that. I would, again, I'd be willing to bet on it that we can expect that from Elden Ring.
Yeah. And yeah, speaking of poison, you know, I think it's a bit torn, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be very Dark Souls 3 just out of convenience. If they're not planning on overhauling it in some way, then, you know, if it's not broken, don't fix it, but I would love more of a return to Dark Souls 1 poise personally, just because I like it more than the hyper armor, I think, generally.
Yes,
But that's sort of
it's my
yeah,
it had my favorite poise system.
yeah.
I definitely get the complaints of it being like a little overpowered and easy to
Hmm.
use it,
Yeah.
but I always wondered if playing with the numbers, like
Hmm.
keeping that system but tweaking the numbers, could fix a lot of things. Like one big thing with Poison Dark Souls 1 is that your refill timer is like super fast. Like if
Mm.
you don't take a hit within like another player character, you might drop their poise a bit, and then within 3 to 4 seconds, it's completely full again if you don't keep getting like subsequent hits in.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, what if you just made that like 8 seconds,
Yeah.
10 seconds? Like that way, it'd be like easier to whittle away at someone's poise and not
Yeah.
have like tanking be as reliable. And so it's always a numbers game. I think
Yeah.
um, for a lot of mechanics, weapon level matchmaking, all of these kinds of
Hmm.
crazy things. Like the devil is always in the details, where a system isn't necessarily inherently good or bad. It's just at what level is it tweaked or managed. And
Yeah.
again, that it's always an uphill battle for FromSoftware to like have these mechanics work in a way where like everyone's happy with them.
Hmm.
I mean, you can definitely never please everyone.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, it's a thing that they have to constantly iterate on.
Yeah, and I think it'll be wild once it gets to the horseback combat, which is supposedly in the game, like how that's gonna fit into the Dark Souls system, because you start talking about poise and armor and like equipment weight, and then I imagine and put them on a horse, and I'm like, man, it's gonna be some interesting stuff, I think.
Absolutely.
It's just, yeah, like I'll have to see it to believe it in some ways, but it was the same way with Sekiro. Like, they did so many things where I was like, okay, grappling, swimming, these aren't things that I've seen from tackle in their Souls games, so it's like I don't know how to work, but then they did it and I was like, oh wow, this is like one of the better feeling swimming mechanics I felt in games, and then the grappling hook was just totally fine. So
Grappling was great.
yeah, that
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I guess sort of a bit of a tangent, but like if they can diverge gameplay from Sekiro in a certain direction, I hope it just leads to them being granted the license for Castlevania.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I'm just like the grappling. I'm like, that's what you do with that. Like, that's what you do with the whip. Uh,
Yeah.
Even the balance system,
Yeah.
you could argue that like using the whip doesn't like have the upfront damage that it necessarily needs. So you kind of like whittle an enemy down till you like
Mm.
stake them with the handle of the vampire killer or whatever you call it. I'm just like,
Oh
oh
yeah.
man, I've been saying for years that they are always making like the perfect 3D Castlevania game,
Yeah.
and there's always something else that's brought to the table, like Bloodborne for the aesthetic,
Hmm.
Sekiro for some more specific mechanics, and
Yeah.
Dark Souls 3 for its world layout.
Yeah.
I'm just like, man, someone Konami, please, like,
Yeah.
uh, let other companies make your games, please.
Yeah. I totally agree, because you know my initial, like, what made Dark Souls click for me was like I grew up on Castlevania and Metroid as like some of my favorite games, and
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, this is like a Metroidvania sort of thing, but like different now. It's like a modern-ish kind of version, but it still gave a lot of those like old school vibes with a lot of the opaqueness and just the difficulty, and just like the willingness to like let you go far from your checkpoint and just die. So, and
Yes. Yeah, that's the thing. Like
yeah.
I grew up as a big fan of Super Metroid and
Hmm.
especially Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Hmm.
And for all the flaws that the Souls games have, you look at like your pick your least favorite Souls game. Like unless if you just like really, really hate one of the games for some unfounded reason.
Yeah.
Like any of the games at their worst, I'm still always feeling like this is basically the best 3D iterations of those kinds of
Hmm.
games. And even if Elden Ring has some weird kind of janky aspects to it or something's not perfect, like I still have again, I always go into these games open minded where like I don't
Hmm.
need them to be a certain way or else I'm gonna be super disappointed.
Yeah.
Um but I that's what I love about this series and why I've always been buying these games day one since Dark Souls 1,
Hmm.
is that there's just a certain level of quality that I can trust will be there. Like
Yeah.
the games don't have to be perfect. I know it's gonna offer something special, and I'm sure
Yep.
Elden Ring's gonna be the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how I feel. And there is hope, because we know you have Dark Souls 1, and then they went into Bloodborne, where Miyazaki was kind of leading, the directing on that, but then the Bloodborne team went into Sekiro for a large part. And I can't remember the co-director's name off the top of my head, but I don't think he's doing anything right now. So Konami, this is your chance.
Yes, this is your chance,
You know,
please. Yeah,
yeah,
like the quote unquote B team, like
yeah,
which is not exactly really a thing entirely. It's
yeah.
not that neatly defined, but like, yeah, definitely give them Castlevania, please.
Yeah, like, okay, this team roughly made Bloodborne and Sekiro, so that's all you need. Just go for it. And it is interesting when you mention, because I always like to do these things, because like you said, like Dark Souls 2 is probably the weakest entry for me, but if the other games didn't exist, it would probably be one of my like top games of all
Yes,
time. Like,
absolutely. Like
yeah,
I think of like just really small moments of the game,
yeah.
just like simple stuff like clearing No Man's Wharf and then like the boat takes you to the next area. I'm like, oh, I basically just got onto like a pirate ship. Like this is
Oh,
Castlevania 3 for the moment. Like
oh, yeah.
it's what it needs to be. Like if
Uh,
you basically like palette swapped, model swap like the Varangian soldiers in No Man's Wharf
yeah.
for like skeletons and if some of them had whips. It's
Yep.
like it's already there. It's
Yeah,
already like Castlevania.
exactly. Yeah, I love No Man's Wharf, and it's, you know, I like to remind people too that Tanamura was co-director on Dark Souls 3. So if you love Dark Souls 3 and say Dark Souls 2 is garbage, don't be worried, because I believe Tanamura is co-director on Elden Ring is my speculation. And no matter what, Miyazaki was part of it because they've got the George R. R. Martin thing, and
Mhm.
that was Sekiro for getting Game of the Year was probably like we talked about. I don't believe in A and B teams, but Sekiro is probably more of a side project than Elden Ring as far as the attention, because Elden Ring is
Yeah,
grabbing new scale. It's got a big celebrity name attached to it, so Miyazaki was probably on it a little more than Sekiro
I would think
during
so.
a lot of development. But like Tanamura did a lot of really good stuff in Dark Souls 2. Like I think Dark
Oh
Souls
yeah.
2 has some of the most interesting mechanics. Like it's totally the one that, and I think you brought this up in your dissected videos. It's the one that does everything differently.
Yes. Yeah. It's just under hood.
Yeah.
It's the most different game,
Yeah.
and yeah, for a lot of the hate that some of the games get, the non Miyazaki ones that are led, again, it's like you said, level of focus. They're
Mhm.
not necessarily putting as much of their focus, so it's not that I don't trust the directors of those games.
Yeah.
That's not where games 100% fall short. I don't
Yeah.
believe. So yeah, like you said, like
Yeah.
if they said like, hey, Tanamura is directing a Castlevania game, I'd be like, hell yes.
Exactly. Like any of them could take over for that. It'd be awesome. And
Yeah.
but I think it is time now to watch the trailer.
Yes, let's go for it.
I think the hype is there, and you know, time to get into it. So with that, let's bring this bad boy up. And I assume you don't watch the trailer every day. I sort of hope that's
I
something.
do not.
so, so hopefully it'll be a little treat for you.
Excellent. Yeah, I've probably seen this like 3 times actually.
Yeah, stay 624, so you know how many times I've seen it at minimum, unfortunately. Really hitting that
You're
like
going for the chill.
yeah, the auteur
Yeah.
thing. The name drops.
Yeah, trying to give the audience chills there.
Yeah. I assume this guy's gonna be the spider
I
boss.
doubt
That's just my
you could
speculation.
even imagine it.
I was making fun of like how in early trailers some of it might like not pan out in the final game, and we're gonna find out like in the final game it's gonna be like some obscure detail, one item description
Yeah.
will reference that person having like that arm grafted on.
Its
Yeah.
fullest brilliance. The Elden Ring. Oh, Elden Ring.
Voice acting is so damn good.
Yeah, like I believe this is
Someone
semi-confirmed unofficially to be like the opening cinematic partially, and I hope there's like
don't tell me
twice as much of this guy
don't
talking.
see it.
It's so good.
Look up at the sky. It burns.
Damn, I love the music in this trailer. It's
So this was actually really cool for me to just watch this now within the given context of what I've been doing for the last couple days.
yeah.
So I'm just wrapping up my first video. It's going to be a spin-off of my Demon Souls Dissected series, and it's going to be called Demon Souls Compare Through,
Hmm.
where I'm basically going to line up the original game and the remake and show in detail like how a lot of things were changed and how the environments were fleshed out.
Oh, I love
Um,
that.
but it's also sort of a low-key excuse where it's not just going to be a comparison of the visuals, but like as I go through an environment, any weird crap I can find out of bounds in the original, any weird like prototype stuff I can uncover, like I'll just use it as an excuse to show any oddities of the game as well. And where my sort of video ends up, it's literally exporting right now as we speak actually. um I sort of talk about how it's kind of cool how Demon Souls was a failure initially. Like it had a very troubled development, and Sony basically approached them wanting to make something that could compete with the Elder Scrolls series, basically.
Yeah.
And it was such a horrible miscalculation from on Sony's behalf.
Yeah.
Basically, like they wanted something that was kind of Oblivion-esque, and they got whatever crap Demon Souls was shaping up to be originally. And
Yeah.
even when it finally released, they weren't that happy with the final product either. Um, they were notoriously just like not happy with the game and had low expectations for it. But later out went on to admit that like, no, we didn't recognize the value of, we didn't see it for what it was basically.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just some, as I talk about in the video, like it's definitely not a hollow PR turnaround. Like oh crap, Dark Souls was successful. We have to pretend like this now. With the the love that was put into Bloodborne, making the Demon Souls remake a PlayStation 5 launch title.
Mm-hmm.
The series overall just has this huge sort of redemption story to it, where it was like they swung, they missed, everything was so close to a colossal failure.
Yeah.
And then it went on to spawn a new subgenre. And then seeing this trailer again now, where it just opens up and they're trying to give you chills just by seeing the names Hidetaka Miyazaki and George R. R. Martin. Yeah. And it's like, what the heck? Like it's really, really cool that we wound up in this place and that these games did wind up being successful. And it was such a slow burn of success. These games were not a hit right out the door.
Yeah, it's funny, because, if Elden Ring hits, it'll kind of be it will have kind of taken the place of Elder Scrolls, I would think, as like a major fantasy title, which is a wild thing that they could kind of end up there in the most circuitous route possible.
That'd be really funny. Like, hey, Sony, you kind of wanted to do this game. We figured it out like 6 games later.
Yeah. I have to imagine, and I've heard of nothing to suggest this, even though there's tons of rumors flying around about FromSoftware all the time, especially right now. But like, you have to imagine that with Demon Souls remake and just like their popularity right now, that like they're like begging them to please do another exclusive for them.
Oh, I'm sure. They've actually have themselves in a really good situation where, of course I don't love exclusives. It is what it is. There's incentive for these companies to draw people to a certain console, so it's always going to be a thing. It's never going to go away.
Yeah.
But I feel like they worked out a really healthy balance in a kind of way where I'm glad that Sony kind of dropped the ball and didn't keep it as an exclusive, because that's what allowed Dark Souls to be, I think, as successful as it was. And then you sort of have this, I think going forward, you're probably going to have a back and forth where every now and again, they'll probably do a Sony exclusive.
Yep.
And I would imagine Sony would probably be very happy about that, because any game that comes out that's multi-platform is kind of free advertising. Like, if everyone really loves Elden Ring, and then yet another exclusive comes out, they're gonna be like, hey, you can play Bloodborne on this system, you can play this new exclusive on this system. Like, so I think Sony and FromSoftware kind of really worked out on their working relationship.
Yeah, and it's really funny that like the only real news of like anything going on with Elden Ring of the last year, one thing was Phil Spencer from Microsoft visiting them, among other Japanese studios to take a look. And it always makes me wonder if Microsoft is at all like, so what could we do to get in a little bit of that exclusive action? So it's sometimes hard being so entrenched in a community to know like how widespread that actually ends up being. But like, with Elden Ring getting most anticipated at TGAs, and just if Elden Ring hits hard and it's really well received and it's got George R. R. Martin's name attached to it, like it's going to be a really hard thing to look away from, probably.
I think so. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I definitely wish them huge success with this project, of course.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm very curious to see where they go from here, just because I've been very curious about, I think Miyazaki is trying to push the envelope with FromSoftware, but also try to tie back into their roots. And I'm super curious, not only about Elden Ring, but like Are we ever going to get another Armored Core? What other weird titles do they have working on? Can I finally get my, like if Sony was going to do anything, I would love Bloodborne 2, but most of all, like give me like a weird horror game. Like if Sony
Yeah.
would like greenlight that, like give me like a Kuon spiritual successor.
hmm I only recently, I've never played Kuon, but
Yeah.
Lobos did like a stream through of it some months back, and that was finally my first time like actually sit and like watch them play the entire game
Yeah.
basically. And like it was cool. Like again, it's weirdly like, yeah, maybe this isn't like quite as good as Silent Hill, but there's something there. From
Yeah.
Software was always kind of onto something,
Yeah, exactly.
even if the execution was like a little wonky.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, and it's I would be very excited to see a
Yeah.
new. Like I've never played any of the Armored Core games either.
Me neither.
I came onto the whole From Software thing with Demon Souls. You know, that was the first game I
Yeah.
played. I played it when it was the latest thing they had out.
Yeah.
And I've been on board since then. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to see them be able to keep experimenting and revisit some older ideas and keep tweaking them.
Yeah, yeah. I've just started playing Kingsfield 4 for the first time, getting into the Kingsfield games, and it is funny. Like, From Software has always kind of been From Software. It's just nobody knew it. And, I think the first person and just the increased jankiness of their older titles was maybe enough to just have them fly under the radar. But, like, it going back as like a Souls fan, you're like, oh, they've always been doing this sort of like
Mhm.
slow, methodical thing with a story you can't discern, but there's tons of like details there for whoever's gonna like take the time to look for them. So I can't wait to do that on an open world thing, like as like a lore person and someone who's a big fan of like fantasy. Like this is our first time I think since Dark Souls 1 getting like a new big world. Bloodborne was a very contained story. It's like
Mhm.
it's much more cosmic horror. It's about its own Yarnum city. It's not so much about like different lands and kingdoms and like stuff like Dark Souls. So this is our first like real return to like me getting to learn a bunch of new fantasy locations.
Mhm.
So I'm very excited. And then as I said, the next thing I like to do is start digging out, seeing what cut content is there, because I always secretly hope they have tons of cut content so that I can get more videos from creators like yourself to like
Yeah,
chew on.
I'm also torn on like after playing the Demon Souls remake. I very much want this to be a next gen title, which I know it's kind of like lame if getting a new console can be expensive and blah blah
Mm-hmm.
blah. Of course, obviously that would be prohibitive for a lot of people. Um, at the same time, though, like I would love for it to have that next gen polish.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, if it comes out for the current or previous gen or whatever, that makes the whole cut content exploration a billion times easier.
Yeah.
So like that would really open things up. Yeah. So I don't know. I want next gen polish, but accessibility into what's happening underneath the hood is also really
Yeah.
cool to have.
Yeah, exactly. Like I want it to run, like I think they could do more ambitious stuff, but considering they were probably making it for this and COVID and everything else pushed it, so it feels more like it should be next gen than like they ever knew it would be because they were going to release it. Supposedly it should already be out by now, but the world conspired against everyone's plans over the last year,
Yes.
so it's one of those things where at the very least, like I just recently got a better PC, so I'll play it on PC anyways, but I also have a
Mhm.
PS5 because I was lucky enough to be able to snag that. And you know, at the very least, it'll run super well, I hope. Like, if nothing
Me
else,
too.
it'll shore
Yeah,
up the yeah.
that'd be one thing if they made it with the anticipation of last gen, so it winds up being like a halfway step between what the generations are, and then that way it could run super super smoothly. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, holding out hope for the games running ultra smoothly is not always the.
Yeah,
You might be setting yourself up for a little bit of disappointment, but
yeah, I tell myself that, but I'm like, you know what? Blighttown might just be Blighttown no matter where it is. So we'll have to see because
exactly.
stuff
No, I
happens.
mean they do have a decent track record with their most recent PC releases, though, like Sekiro and
Yeah.
Dark Souls 3. So you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and I just with the way I am, I'll end up getting it on PC and PS5 anyways. So
Oh, I absolutely will. Part of my workflow includes typically playing more on console. And there's a lot of things you can do on PC to be careful with your modding and, not go online. And if you don't want to get soft banned, I just don't care.
Yeah.
I'll get 2 copies of the game and I'll just hack whatever online, and
Yeah.
I don't care what happens as
Yeah.
long as there's no threat of a Steam wide ban, which is not anything they've done for their previous games. It's
Yeah.
always game specific soft banning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just never worry about it. So PC is for experimenting and messing around, and I can do that to my heart's content
Yeah.
by double dipping.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and it's been tons of fun talking about Elden Ring, and I can't wait to see this Demon Souls series you're working on. I love that idea. It sounds like super fun, and your dissected videos are giving life to like decade-old games and just like renewing. Every time I watch a dissected video, I leave it being like, wow, I got to go play Dark Souls again, or whichever game it's about. I'm always like, oh, I got to check out that game again. There's a lot of cool stuff there. So,
oh, thank you so much. That's so awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So, where can people find you on the internet?
Oh, sure. I'm under the handle Illusory Wall. So most things just use that handle. So youtube.com/illusory wall, twitter.com/illusory wall, Patreon, etc.
Yeah.
And or you can always just do a Google search Dark Souls Dissected, Demon Souls Dissected. I'm kind of doing series for most of the games, so you can kind of just plug in Dissected and see if I have anything for what you're looking for, pretty much.
Perfect. Awesome. So this has been day 624 of watching the Elden Ring trailer, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 625.